Hey there, welcome to a special interim episode of the Pokemon Scarlet Surprise Trade Crochet Badge Quest. Normally I would be surprise trading a Pokemon before each gym, Titan and Team Starbase, and then crocheting the Pokemon I receive each time. However, this episode's a little different and won't feature a trade. During the event of the last episode, we saw the long-awaited evolution of Shelgon, which meant that I can now finish the line in Crochet. Bagon was traded to us all the way back in episode 3, 2 years ago now. Bagon challenged Katie, making it all the way to her ace Teddiursa before being overpowered and having to rely on his teammates. Ever since, Bagon has stayed on the team, absorbing experience and biding his time until his day in the sun. All the way back in episode 8, Bagon hit level 30 and evolved into the middle stage Shelgon. Shelgon is the endurance Pokemon. My favourite explanation of this classification comes from the Pokemon Moon Pokedex. It reads, "They lurk deep within caves, motionless, neither eating nor drinking. Why they don't die is not known."
Why won't you die? Nanomachine, son.
Breaking down Shelgon's design for Crochet shouldn't be too difficult a task. Like most 3-stage bug Pokemon, or even its pseudo-legendary family Pupitar, Shelgon retreats into a cocoon-like stage. Its body is oval, the grey base being seen in the gaps of its shell. The shell envelops most of its body. White segments encase the body lengthwise, leaving only a small hexagon uncovered for the eyes at the front and another hexagon for the butt. The top 3 segments have a long ridge down their centres. Unlike a lot of cocoon Pokemon, Shelgon actually has a way to move. Legs. Shelgon becomes a quadruped with 4 stumpy little legs. The legs feature a red colouring on the inner thighs. It always reminds me of the evil cat from Mouse Hunt when it bursts out of the carry and starts walking around. The colours I'll use for Shelgon are a grey for the base body, white for the shell, and red for the inner thighs. I think there's a couple of ways I could have made Shelgon's body, but I decided to make a grey oval first to act as the base. I could then make the shell later and sew it together to give it some depth. Also, again, the shell could have been crafted in numerous different ways, but I went with making each segment separately. They're basically just 6 long rectangles that get wider in the centre. Each segment has 2 of these rectangles that get stuffed slightly to bulk up Shelgon's shell. I did find it quite difficult to get the measurements right, but the beauty of working with crochet is that it can stretch slightly and fit the whole piece when I sew all the segments down. I make 4 stumpy legs by crocheting some small cylinders. I thought about doing a colour change for the red inner thighs, but thought it would look better if I did them separately. The ridges across the top of the shell are just rounded off chains. I add a tiny bit of stuffing to raise them a little when I sew them down. The eyes are small semicircles made in yellow. I give him pupils and eyelids with black yarn, and Shelgon is ready. Shelgon stuck around on our team for a while after evolving. It still needed to reach level 50 until it could become a Salamence and finally get its wish of flight. A string of high-level, single-stage or fully evolved traded Pokemon meant that I didn't have to go out and train too much, so Shelgon was left to feed on the scraps of our challenges. It wasn't until episode 14, a big 6 episodes after its last evolution, that Shelgon finally hit level 50 and evolved into Salamence. Salamence's design looks quite intimidating, both in terms of crochet and the Pokemon itself, but it's actually quite simple when you break it down into basic shapes. I always thought Salamence's body was hamburger shaped, like those wide frogs.
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It lies quite close to the ground, with the 4 strong legs all in a bent position, featuring 3 sharp talons each. Looking underneath, we can see that Salamence has remnants of Shelgon in its design. It retains the red inner thighs, as well as 3 rectangular segments of the shell on its underbelly. The tail is long and pointed with a red underside. Salaменce's head is triangular and is usually shown open-mouthed, so I'll try and achieve this effect in crochet. It has 6 triangular fins that protrude from its face, 3 on either side. They fan out below 2 red brow ridges that shape the angry eyes. Salamence's bottom jaw is white and it has 4 sharp fangs in its mouth, 2 up top and 2 on the bottom. The head connects to the body with a long neck that features a red throat. Finally, Salamence's wings are an unusual shape for a flying dragon. They're kind of axe-like. I think these shapes will be the most difficult thing about this project. The colours I'll use for Salamence are the blue I've previously used for Bagon for the bulk of the body, a red for the wings, brows and underside features, and a white for the bottom jaw and underbelly. I begin Salamence at the tail. I thought doing the tail and body as one part would work better than doing the head and the body, so I made a thin cone that expands outwards as it gets longer. The red underside can be added later. Getting to the base, I begin to widen out my round in an oval shape to achieve that burger effect. I have to make it super wide before working down the body and closing it off at the chest. I thought the legs would be best to do next so Salamence can at least stand. I make a circle as the base of the foot, and then crochet upwards to make a cylinder. All of Salamence's legs bend when it stands, so I add in some short rows to give it a knee joint and finish working up the thigh. I make 4 of these, the back 2 being slightly shorter. Jumping up to the wings, I thought I'd tackle these early on to get that strange shape out of the way. I start at the base closest to the body and make a cylinder. This will all be flattened after I finish the wings. I then begin expanding my rounds to make a large circle. I add some odd increases on either end to curve out the wing points and give it the axe blade shape. Once I'm pleased with the shape, I can flatten the piece, add a little wire inside to keep it sturdy and sew it together. I do think I should have reshaped these a little more and made them bigger in hindsight. I make the head next. I craft a cone in blue, perhaps making it a little too pointed. I then add short rows to bend it down before working a long tube for the neck. The bottom jaw in white will be separate. I make a small semicircle that can be sewn to the bottom of the head. Now it's time to get the jaw pieces together. I make a long rounded chain in red for the throat piece, as well as a tombstone shape to fill the inner jaw. I add a similar shape in pink for the tongue, stuffing it slightly. The top of the mouth is just a red triangle, and the teeth are 4 small white triangles. The fins at the side of the head are triangles that I can fold so that they support themselves better. I make 6 of them and get them stitched to the head. The brow ridges come next, just a chain in red with the next row giving it some height. I add them on above 2 white eyes before moving on to the other small features of the body. The underside of the tail is a long rounded chain. The shell belly can then go on top of that. 3 rectangles are made in white, with the centre one being a touch longer than the others. Finally, I make 12 small cones in white for the talons. A lot of little details, but Salamence and his whole line is finally complete after almost 2 years on the team. His dream of flight has ultimately been achieved. I briefly switched Salamence onto another file, one with the completed DLC and synchro machine, so I can let my dragon fly free around Blueberry Academy.
This isn't flying, this is falling with style.
There's still one unevolved Pokemon on the team. Perhaps their time in the spotlight is coming soon. Thanks for watching this filler episode, and I'll see you next time.